Hello everybody and welcome back to Art with Mrs. Kelly. Today we are going to take our sketch and we are going to go ahead and begin watercolor painting. Now as you can see, I've gone ahead and I have erased all of the grid lines, and I have gone in and I have just cleaned up all my pencil drawings. And again, this is darker than yours should be. Yours should be just light enough where you can just see it on paper. But because we are doing this for the magic of wonderful television, and we're going to use this as a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my background. I'm going to look at my background. I'm going to mix a light color. So I'm going to go ahead and get my paints ready. You guys are going to each have your own set of paints. You're going to have this lovely set of watercolor paints. I'm making my background, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to mix myself some paint colors. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And if you notice, my back color is not white. It is a creamy off-white color. So Mrs. Kelly, you're only putting water in the top. Why would you do that? Because we're going to use the yellow and a little bit of the orange, and we're going to mix that to create something along the lines of what my wall looks like. Now the best part is that we can play around with this until we get something that remotely looks like it. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move my palette out of the way. I'm going to bring my painting back down closer to you so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to go ahead and just very lightly paint in my background. And as you can see, it's not really showing up too much, so I might want to go ahead and just take a little poetic licensing and maybe make the wall a little bit more brighter color. A little bit more yellow. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere fun. Okay. Let's get a little more yellow. I have a lot of wall to make, so I think that the more I mix now, the less I'll have to worry later. Oh, look how pretty that is. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in the watercolor color of my background. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so as you can see, I'm getting a little bit further in on my art making here. I'm using that lovely color that I've mixed, which I'm going to call Tangerine Wall, because I like naming my colors. And I'm going to just go ahead and fill in the entire background with that color. Now I can go back in later. Oops, I made a mess on there. Oops, I made a mistake is one of my favorite things to figure out how to fix. Don't worry about it. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to finish my background color. Now, here's one of the cool things that I like to do. I leave a little bit of my background color, and I kind of like to incorporate it just a little bit into the objects that I have. And it's just a little something that I like to do because I think it's a little bit fun. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to start with my grapefruit. Now my grapefruit is very, very, very bright and bold. But what I want you to notice is that we have multiple layers of color here. And the same thing with the background. Now once this dries, if I want to go back in and make any parts darker, I can do that. Can't make it lighter once it's on the paper, but we can definitely make it darker. But I want to go ahead right now and I want to play with the coloring. And what I'm going to recommend that you do is I'm going to ask you each to make 3 different versions of that yellowish orange that you see right here in that grapefruit. So I'm going to go ahead and play with that. Okay, so what I've done is in my reservoir here, in my little mixing areas, I've filled quite a bit of water in both of these because oops, there I made a big mess. So I'm going to fill a little bit more water. So now you get to see what I did. What I did is I just took some clean water and did that. Okay, and always make sure that your painting brush is clean. So if you need to, you can always wipe that on a piece of paper towel. But now my brush is clean again. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use part of this, but I'm going to make it a little bit more orange to make some of my darkers. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that and make that nice and light orange. And then just a little bit more of the yellow on this one. And then I'm going to play around and mix these colors on my palette to get that nice orange, yellow, tangerine-ish color of the grapefruit. So I guess it will be grapefruit instead of tangerine. So let's play around a little bit. Okay, so darkest, highlight, kind of middle tones all around here. So I'm going to play around a little bit now. Okay, so I know my darkest is over here. So I am not going to go right ahead and grab any darker hues. I'm not going to go grab any black or brown or any things like that because I'm going to show you a really cool trick. of how to mix your colors and how to get them to blend with using things other than black or brown. Okay, now I'm going to keep playing around with this. And as you notice, I am not making this go across the image in anything other than circular kind of motion. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of that white of the paper there, and again, you can always add more paint. I can't take it away. I'm going to leave a little bit of that shine there for my highlight on my grapefruit. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play around and I'm going to mix in some of these colors here. So a little bit of the shadow down there. Now, opposites work beautifully when you want to tint something with a more natural look. So what is the opposite of orange? For those of you who have paid attention in class, we know that opposites on the color wheel are across from each other, and the opposite of orange is, if you think of the New York Mets, you got orange and blue. So I'm going to take a tiny little bit of blue, tiny bit of blue. I'm just going to put that there. It's going to hang out. Okay, then I'm going to grab a little bit of this on the side here, and look what's happening to that. See how it's turning into that lovely brown color? And now I can go in and I can play around and I can get that shadow to look more natural, because I haven't gone in there with this bright brown. I've gone in there with the blue, and I'm lining it up all along the edges where you see those shadows overlapping. And what's this going to do? Well, this is going to make it look more like a grapefruit. A natural looking grapefruit. And remember, you want to mix those colors. The whole idea is to mix those colors. We don't want this flat looking thing sitting in front of us, okay? Now I think I need to amp up these colors just a little bit more. So I'm going to play with some of these yellows. And I'm going to go back in there and brighten it up a little bit. Now this grapefruit has this really cool texture to it, and I want to go ahead in there and I want to get that texture in mine just a little bit. So how do I do that? Well, I can go ahead in there and I can just make this have a little stippling texture. It's a stippling texture, Mrs. Kim. Okay, well, if I go ahead and I go grab my paintbrush. Okay, I've grabbed a large paintbrush. If I go in there and I tap the bristles, I can not only achieve some texture, but it'll also play with some of that color mixing for me in a more natural way. And since this is mostly dry, this brush, if I want to blend the colors just a little bit more, I can go ahead and do that. Now look how beautiful and spherical that looks. Isn't that beautiful? I'm going to go back in there now and I'm going to add some texture. Oops, I put the wrong one. You see that texture that's happening there? I'm going to go ahead and mix. And I'm going to go back in there and add some of that texture back in. Because a grapefruit is a bumpy thing. Now that I'm finishing up the grapefruit, I can play around with some of the textures again. Alright, so I think I've sufficiently shaded him. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix and clean my palette first, and I'm going to go mix my colors for my apple next. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to do our apple. So as you can see, I have cleaned my paint palette. That's a very important step. I know it doesn't sound like an important step, but it is. And paper towel is also very helpful, so have one of these available. Or 20, if you're like me, 20. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start in, and again, there's not just one color in this apple. If you study that apple really carefully, you'll see a little bit of yellow on this side, you'll see the darker reds are over here. I didn't even put the stem or any of that stuff in later. I'm going to do that with some other special tools, so we will deal with that in a few minutes. But right now we're going to make our apple. So I am going to start with the traditional red. Okay, and since that is going to be the primary color here, and meaning not only that it is a primary color, but also the main feature color here, we're going to make that most of this area here. Give it a nice deep red color because it is quite deep in red. Now I'm going to put a little dab of red here. Okay, and now I'm going to go in here and grab some yellow. We need a yellowish red. Now, I'm going to layer these colors. Now, why are you starting with the yellow, Mrs. Kelly? Because in this corner, there is some yellowish red. And I want that to be prevalent in the actual apple itself. In the center of the apple, there's got a little bit of that too. So we're just going to leave a little splatter of that there. And right now it looks like not much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and add some red over here. Ooh, there's quite a bit of water in there. And boys and girls, what is the opposite of red on the color wheel? Well, Mrs. Kelly, I know the answer to that. I'm raising my hand right now, or I'm watching it at home and I already know the answer because I've already said that if I think of strawberry, I know that the answer is green. So I'm going to take that green and I'm going to mix it in there and watch how that magical color has appeared. Okay, now let's get that major red on there. Major red reporting for duty. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to go in and I'm going to go ahead. Now, if you accidentally hit the other side, just match it up with a little bit of that color and it'll make a natural, kind of natural. Oops, I did an uh-oh. I mixed my color paint. I mixed my paint and I should not have. If this happens to you, see what I did? That's supposed to be yellow, not orange. Okay, take your paintbrush. Let me move this over so you can see what I did. I made an oopsie. Oopsies are fun to fix. Not supposed to be orange. I did a no-no. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix that, and it's very simple. Ready? Like magic. Boom. All better, okay? So if that happens to you, do not panic. I repeat, do not panic. Okay, let's get this guy back here. Okay. Oh, we started to move on our own here. We started to create our own little spot of some type of color mixing, which is lovely. Okay. Let's get that red in there. And that is a deep, intense red. So we really want to go to town and get that red. Okay. But we want to leave a little bit of that spot red, a little bit white. Okay, because we want to make sure that we have the ability to go back in later and add in our highlights. But with watercolor paint, you can't add it back in. Once it's done, it's done. So you can't go back in and add that in. Oh, okay. Let's add him in a little bit more. All right, let's shade that a little bit more with some of the red. We don't want it being that green. Green is my favorite color, as I'm sure you all know by now, but we don't want it that green. Okay, now I again am shading in the sphericalness of the shape. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of that shadow down here because, as you can see by the pear, we have a little bit of that shadow. And I'm going to pull that just like I did with the grapefruit. Okay, go back in, get some more of that really deep red color in there. Alright, and I kind of like where this apple is and what it's doing. Okay, so I'm going to stop with that apple for now. Next thing I'm going to do, since I already have that like reddish color going here, I'm going to go and do my grapes next. Normally I would leave my grapes for last because there's so many of them, but we're going to play around with those grapes. Okay, so we are going to go ahead now and we're going to make those grapes. Since I already have this like brownish color and this reddish color here, we're going to go ahead and make this a purplish orange color. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to incorporate some of that purple, just to prove to you that it really is purple. I'm going to incorporate some of that purple into that red. And really make it that deep, deep color. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start playing around just with the base color. And I'm going to go ahead and each grape has to kind of be handled with love and tender care. So you have to go ahead and you have to be able to darken and lighten your color as you go. Okay, so if I want to make this a little bit of a darker one, and this is a little darker here because it's got the shadows, I can go ahead and block in my shadows first, and that will make getting the coloration a little bit more accurate. Doing grapes is very fun to do, but it is also extremely time consuming. So we are going to go ahead and fast forward this part so that way you can see all grapes getting done. Okay, so now we have the grapes done, we have the apple done, we have the grapefruit done, and minus the details, we have a good amount of the painting actually done. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to do the pear. Now I've gone ahead and cleaned off the palette again. It is extremely important that you do that. Also, it's really important that you get clean water each time. And you can see a little bit of the remnants of where I was painting before, but the idea is you want clean water each time because your brush needs to be very clean so you don't contaminate the colors. So I'm going to go ahead again and fill my little reservoirs with a little bit of that happy water there. And ooh, that one's a little dirty. I'm going to go with this one here. And just to be on the safe side, we might use that as a little bit of a tint. I kind of like the purple that's, ooh, look at how that's swirled in there like that. I might use him. Okay, so predominantly a greenish brown color. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Now that is a very deep green, and that is not the same green that we see there. So how do I mix that? Well, if I take some of that yellow and I go like this, and I keep going like this, eventually I will create that beautiful shade of green. Okay, so we had a tiny little technical glitch, which involved me not being able to show you that I had started painting here and here with shadows, but that's okay. It happens. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and continue painting. Now I've made that, we're back. And I've cleaned out my palette again, and I am ready to go ahead and add the floor, or in this case, our table in. Now, I'm going to use a little poetic licensing, and because we have so many nice, deep, warm colors, with the exception of this lovely pear, I'm going to go ahead and play around with some cooler colors. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go for some blue. And try to get that steel color blue, but really have some fun with it. So I'm going to go ahead and lay down my base. And I'm going to go back in every now and again, closest to my objects, because that's where their shadows are going to be. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some of that orange back in there, just to shade it a little tiny bit. But I like the way the blue is looking against those colors, and I think it's going to make it pop. Okay, so there you have it. We're going to add some finishing touches in. I'm going to go ahead and add in the stem of our apple. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the tiny little area in the back here. It kind of comes out a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and add in just a few of those stems here and there. Just darkening up a little bit of the lines here and there also. You know, just so that you get the illusion of the grape stems. Okay, last part, and then we're done. We have a little bit of a brown circle going on up here, and then right out of the top, like the cherry on the ice cream sundae. Boop, 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 boop. And then we are done. I hope you guys enjoyed this painting lesson with me. Check back for more videos and make sure to subscribe.